Hello again, Chris Mathieu with Forbidden Knowledge News, inviting you to the only mega conference in the world that's going to convene for 7 days and 8 nights. It's the 2020 Laughlin UFO Mega Conference. It's going to be February 15th through 22nd in Laughlin, Nevada. And there's going to be over 30 extraordinary scientists, researchers, and experiencers there to present unprecedented information. Today, I'm so happy to be joined by physicist and entrepreneur Prasad. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a nice day. It's been productive. Thanks for asking, Chris. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm excited to hear what you have to present because we live in fascinating times. Our technology is growing so fast. We're at the advent of quantum computing and amazing possibilities that brings, as well as we're hearing the mainstream media talk about UFOs. We're hearing the military-industrial complex. We're hearing the Navy admitting that, there's sightings, all this exciting stuff going on right now in our lifetime. So first, let's hear a little bit about yourself and then tell us what you'll be presenting at the conference.
Sure. So essentially, as you pointed out, I'm a physicist. I have an engineering background formally. However, I moved into the world of quantum physics and quantum computing fairly quickly after I graduated. For context, I was really deep into the AI side of things before I graduated engineering. I had worked at the biggest bank in Canada working on AI, and I had filed a couple of patents for the bank as well. And so they had given me a return offer to join them the next year after I graduated. But here's the funny part. I became extra obsessed with quantum mechanics. Like, I was always reading about physics, learning it. I've done lots of physics before my undergrad. But then I realized that there was something here that from just a philosophical standpoint and from the edge of science standpoint, that needed to be addressed. And it was far more exciting than just the normal engineering day-to-day life. So by the time I graduated, I was at a bit of a crossroads. Do I go deeper into physics, knowing that there's no direct impact necessarily to the world, right? There's so many problems that still need to be solved. And really, so like, do I do that, or do I work for this big bank with a nice, comfortable job, doing some really cool stuff on the AI side of things? And I ended up kind of leaving that job fairly quickly. I left after 4 days to apply to the world's it was the world's first quantum computing incubator. It's an elite science incubator that generally only takes people with a master's and PhD in physics, but they were willing to make an exception for me. Part of what helped was I had quite the track record in the tech world anyways before this. So what I ended up doing was starting a company through this quantum computing incubator, and I was exposed to the world's best scientists. I still am, constantly surrounded by them. And what we did was my company sort of started focusing on the simulation side of things, because that's the biggest power of quantum computing that it really offers, is your ability to simulate nature, right? We can't do that with classical computers as well as we can with quantum computers. The problem, though, is that quantum computers are still nascent. So a lot of what us researchers have to do is we need to contribute to, based on the physics of the machines, how do we improve them? Because those are, they're very hard quantum computational problems, sure, but the actual underlying hardware requires huge advances in physics still, and that whole field needs support. So what I realized was that it's kind of like a positive feedback loop that we could create. We can use our current quantum computers with our current AI capabilities to help design better quantum computers and discover these new physics to create these new computers. So we're kind of like in this meta field, you can say, like what my company works on. At the same time, though, over the last year, I started reading more and more into the UFO sort of topic, especially because of what happened with AA-tip. My mind was more open to it. Actually, much more. I would not have taken this seriously if it wasn't for those NY Times articles that come out. So Yeah, after a while, I joined UFO Twitter, if there's a name for it. And that was amazing because there were so many conversations that we had where it was like, wait, this guy's right, or like, this was so cool to read. And that theory is definitely wrong. But, like, it was just a nice way of engaging and understanding. And I realized fairly quickly that this topic was underserved. It was not treated properly with the scientific rigor that it absolutely deserves. So, but of course, you got to keep in mind, if you put yourself in my shoes, I'm one of the few 20-year-olds that this incubator took a risk on, right? They've given me, like, my company was started off at a valuation of 1.7 million Canadian. And here I am starting to talk about UFOs. So it's been quite the journey. It's been difficult, but it's been worth it. So at the conference, what I want to talk about is what will a new world of science look like? How will our education system change, and how will the way we fundamentally do science change, and what will it bring us? So, yeah.
That sounds fascinating. Now, when it comes to all this stuff going on with the mainstream media and UFOs, what do you think that will bring us in the future? Do you think that it's a way to slowly introduce new technologies and exotic materials to us?
I think so, but I'm starting to realize it's less about the technology per se and more about the cultural change, because in the end of the day, this tech, we will eventually figure out the tech too. Maybe not this century. Like, if nobody helped us, right, I'm sure it would, in a couple centuries, we would also be developing our own UAPs to the level that we see them at. But I think it's more the fact that what we're seeing now is like a cultural acclimatization to like sort of like an awakening, especially for the science world, to realize that there's actually more than what meets the eye, and the fundamental nature of reality is different. Like, that's what I'm starting to realize, and so long as science ignores that, we're not going to get very far. We're just going to keep making these incremental additions to our chemical propulsion systems. We're going to be building better iPhones and laptops, but really, and maybe better computers, right? Quantum computers, but there's no current fundamental breakthroughs in physics. Every physicist knows this. We all complain about it. And I see why. Like, I think that the next breakthroughs will come from this topic.
The more I look at the phenomenon and the more people I talk to about it, it gets more and more deep. It seems like the more I find out, the less I understand, because this phenomenon, it's not just a physical phenomenon. It seems like there is some aspect of it that's non-physical, whether you want to call it interdimensional or something like that. There's some level that we're failing to understand. What are your thoughts about this aspect of the phenomenon?
I think you're absolutely on point. It's this aspect of the phenomena that makes it so hard to study, right? It's A, not reproducible, and B, even when actually there's a saying, I forgot who told me, but there's a saying about it, and it's funny, and it's, the phenomena is repeatable, just not on your own dime, right? So it does repeat, just not when you want it to. And so that makes it hard, and also the fact that, like, if you look at how science tries to take a reductionist take on stuff like consciousness and the human experience, most of that is currently left to psychology. And the thing though is that our reality is still based on physics. It's still underneath the hood so far that we know of. It's still running on mathematical rules of logic. So there seems to be this weird disconnect between people's experiences and the spiritual side and the math. And so I understand why it's difficult to study.
Definitely. And when we talk about the growing technology, how it is growing so fast, and when you look at AI, they've had many researchers and scientists warn about, I guess you could say, the dangers of AI. Do you think that there is any threat that we should be worried about the future of AI?
Yeah, there certainly is. I think the biggest threat is actually AI bias, because every AI system right now has bias, and the bias comes from the underlying data sets that it was trained on. So, for example, we have cases, I'll use one that's it's very unfortunate. So there was a store somewhere in the States. They decided to use AI to predict which one of their products should have a glass enclosed case around them, right? And that AI product only picked the hair product that had like African Americans on it. And this is a direct result of AI bias because it was trained on these biased data sets that the police were giving to them in some other places. So we need to worry about eventually, once we start giving more power to them, we need to understand what their own biases are. And it reflects our biases as a society. But right now in the near future, that is our biggest concern, just like letting these rules get dictated, giving it to somebody that might not be objective, even if it's an AI. However, our real long-term worry is going to be how will we preserve the human identity? Because it seems like that's going to be eradicated if we're not careful.
Well, it seems like we're already headed in that direction. There's so many aspects of our everyday life that seem to be making us less of humans. I mean, it starts with I think we're changing on a genetic level from the food we're eating and the stuff we're drinking. And our mental state is being augmented by social media, TV, and everything is, it's so rapidly changing. I think we're seeing a lot of these changes occur right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you're right. And the changes are accelerating, right? Because they compound on top of each other.
Definitely. And as far as the UFO phenomenon, do you think that we would ever have open communication with these beings? I mean, it seems from history, research on our ancient history, the stuff that's been hidden from us, that at one point we did have communication with otherworldly beings. Do you think that this would be possible in our future?
It will, and I think it will happen in our lifetimes. But obviously the question is a matter of when. But I don't think it's going to happen until we're spiritually prepared. I mean, we are so primitive. We can't even treat each other properly. Like, why would they expect us to treat them properly, right? Most people would just have their entire lives ruined if a giant alien spaceship showed up over the city, right? Like it would be the end of the world, literally. And so long as that's true, we're never going to have open contact.
Very well said. And Deep, I look so forward to meeting you at the conference and hearing your presentations. It's going to be excellent. And thank you so much for coming by today.
Thanks, man. Likewise. The pleasure's all mine.
Not only is there going to be 30 extraordinary speakers, but you're going to get to enjoy a night skywatch, a film festival, and awesome social meal events where you get to meet these amazing speakers. This is also going to be the world's lowest cost convention. But you got to go to Laughlin UFO Mega Conference.com right now to make sure you get your early discount package prices. You don't want to miss this amazing event.